Welcome to this week's episode of Capital City News. We hope you're taking care and staying safe. If you're looking for ways to give back to the community, specifically to those who have been impacted heavily by COVID-19, check out Salt Lake City's Raise Up SLC fundraiser. To learn more, visit raiseupslc.com, or you can text Give SLC to 21000. On this week's episode of Capital City News, we hear from Salt Lake City Council Chair Chris Wharton about zero-based budgeting and what that means for residents of the city. And our History Minute is about President-elect Joe Biden and his visit to the city for the Cancer Moonshot. Let's get started with our legislative update and look back.
At its November 17th meeting, the City Council received an informational update on local emergencies, including COVID-19, as well as updates on efforts to help those experiencing homelessness and efforts related to racial equity in policing, discussed an amendment to the city's budget, adopted a ceremonial resolution with the mayor declaring November 20th as Transgender Day of Remembrance in Salt Lake City and December 1st as World AIDS Day, and heard from the public on a variety of issues. To learn more, visit slc.gov/council.
A virtual community conversation on the rising rate of hate crimes in the United States and Utah was held in partnership with the Salt Lake City Mayor's Office, the Salt Lake City Public Library, the United Jewish Federation of Utah, and their partners against hate. This timely panel discussion was the second virtual event in the Community Conversation series, where leaders in national organizations joined together to address critical questions about the growing epidemic of hate crimes and hate incidents. Panelists also shared ways to report, advocate for policy, and help create understanding and awareness to try and prevent hate crimes from happening in and around the country.
I'm grateful for you as leaders in this work. Our commitment is to never stop working against bias, hate, and racism in our community. In Salt Lake City, there is no place for hate.
Shop safe, shop small, shop local. The holiday season is upon us, and now more than ever, local businesses need your support. COVID-19 has made for a challenging year, but businesses are working to keep their customers safe by offering unique services like online ordering, curbside pickup, shopping by appointment, and more. As you're thinking about creative and unique gifts for your loved ones, consider shopping locally or supporting a small business. For every dollar spent locally, more than half comes right back to growing Salt Lake City's local tax base. Help strengthen our economy. To learn more, visit localfirst.org. Salt Lake City is conducting its first zero-based budgeting exercise, a process to review the Salt Lake City Police Department's budget. Council Chair Chris Wharton shares details on the process, what this means for residents and racial equity, and next steps.
The mayor and city council are in the middle of a multi-pronged effort to improve accountability, equity, and transparency in policing. It began this summer as city leaders built the annual budget with these goals in mind. One of the steps the council put into motion was an audit of the police department budget, followed by a process called zero-based budgeting, which is an exercise that examines police budget from the ground up. And with us is the chair of the council, who also represents the city's 3rd district, Chris Wharton. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us what role this audit plays in the process that you're working on?
This audit is going to help us as council members determine on a very specific and detailed level exactly where taxpayer money is being spent on police resources and how that money is allocated, how it's used, where the areas that are being funded, what isn't being funded, and it just gives us a much more detailed view of the inner workings of the department. So we will take that information and use it to inform the city's first zero-based budget exercise.
At what stage is this audit in at this point?
So we have just just finalized or are finalizing who are going to be the auditors for this. And then the audit will begin immediately thereafter. We're hoping to get started later this month.
Can you talk more about zero-based budgeting in general and how it's going to help in this specific process?
Sure. So zero-based budgeting is a little bit different than the way we typically do budgets. We typically do a base budget where a department will come to us and say, this is what you have given us in the past. This is what we anticipate our needs will be for this year. And this is why we're asking for this amount for this year. And a lot of the discussion really focuses on the difference between what the department currently has and what they're asking for moving forward. A zero-based budget starts with the premise that the department has $0, and then you slowly add on top of that all of the things that the department needs, and so it allows the council to really scrutinize that money and make sure that that we're accounting for every dollar that's being spent. And it allows us as council members to have more visibility on the inner workings of the department and to make decisions regarding funding that reflect the values and the goals of the city.
Can you talk to us about those goals, especially in this process with zero-based budgeting for the police department? What are those goals?
What we've heard from the public, a huge outcry from the public in this last year, is that they want more transparency and accountability from the police department. They want to know what exactly the police are doing, what resources they're using, and how are police officers held accountable to the public. And a lot of that comes down to like other areas that are outside the budget, but a lot of it is really tied to what the budgetary resources of the department are. So that's why it's really particularly relevant to this zero-based budgeting exercise.
Can you talk about what the next steps are for this?
Yeah, so once the auditor is finalized, they will work with council staff and administrative staff and the police department to go through all of their just the daily operations of the department and find out where and how money is being allocated to meet those operations. And then they'll make recommendations about whether or not they think that funding is adequate or whether funding is being used for what its intended allocation was for. And then the council can make decisions based on that about what adjustments to make to the budget going forward.
For residents of Salt Lake City who want to keep an eye on this process and maybe have their voices heard further down the line, where do they go to do that? Where do they go to keep an eye on this?
Yes, absolutely. And we hope that they will. They can go to slccouncil.com. That's the city council's website. And we'll be posting information there about updates regarding policing and equity. And we'll of course have our public discussions in all of our city council work sessions and formal meetings. They can also follow what the city's doing through the Commission on Racial Equity and Policing. We hope that group will also have input on this process moving forward. And the time when it's really going to start to where we're going to really want to hear input from residents is at the start of budget season, which it will be in the spring of 2021. Usually kind of those discussions start around April or May and carry on into June. That's when we have to finalize the budget. Great.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about this.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for bringing this issue to the public's attention.
And now it's time for our History Minute.
In his final State of the Union address in 2016, President Barack Obama tasked his vice president with what he called a moonshot to cure cancer. By February 1st, 2016, Vice President Joe Biden had convened his first meeting of the Cancer Moonshot Task Force, hoping to establish a roadmap to curing cancer in the world. Over the course of the rest of the year, Vice President Biden brought together an unprecedented number of cancer researchers, hospitals, survivors, and stakeholders to help chart that course. No fact-finding mission to cure cancer would be complete without a trip to Salt Lake City to hear from those at the Huntsman Cancer Institute. And on February 29, 2016, Vice President Biden landed in Salt Lake City to do just that. Accompanied by Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, the Vice President toured the facilities and hosted a roundtable discussion with the administrators to see what could be done to envision a future without cancer. In October of 2016, Vice President Biden delivered his report, and then in December of 2016, Congress passed the 21st Century Cures Act, authorizing $1.8 billion in funding for the Cancer Moonshot over 7 years. While cancer is not yet cured, local researchers like the Huntsman Cancer Institute continue their work to stop it. And in November of 2020, Joe Biden was elected to be the 46th President of the United States, vowing to continue the government's work on this project.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode. Please tune in next time to stay up to date on all the latest Salt Lake City government news, updates, and COVID-19 information and resources. Tune in next time. For SLC TV, I'm Poonam Kumar.